Snow fell in thick, suffocating drifts across the barren plains. She collapsed against a gnarled tree, lips blue, hands numb, and the cold was already stealing her strength. Each breath was a struggle, each heartbeat a battle. Then, through the white haze, he appeared tall, steady, and strangely calm against the raging blizzard. A stranger, yes, but somehow carrying a warmth she hadn't felt in days. His eyes met hers, and in that silent moment, the fragile thread between life and death shifted. The wind tore across the plains, whipping snow into blinding sheets that stung her eyes. Clara stumbled forward, each step heavier than the last, boots sinking into the frozen ground. Her fingers were numb, her lips cracked, and every breath was a thin rasp that threatened to fail her. Somewhere behind her, the trail she had been following vanished into white nothingness. Panic clawed at her chest, but she pushed on, fueled by sheer desperation. She saw it before she understood it, a dark figure moving steadily through the storm. Her heart faltered. Hope and fear tangled together like the barbed brush along the trail. "Hello," she called, voice weak and trembling. No answer, only the howl of the wind. The figure approached, tall and purposeful, boots crunching faintly against the snow. A man, cloaked in layers of weathered cloth, his face shadowed beneath a wide-brimmed hat. There was a calm in his presence that seemed almost impossible. Against the chaos of the blizzard. "Need help?" His voice was low, steady, carrying over the wind with surprising clarity. Clara's chest tightened. She wanted to refuse, to scream that she could manage. But the cold had already sapped her strength. She nodded, words failing her. The man crouched slightly, offering a gloved hand. Hesitation lingered in her gaze. Trust didn't come easily in a world that had already taken so much. As he helped her rise, the wind gusted, nearly knocking her off her feet. He adjusted her coat, hands firm and sure. "You won't make it alone. Come with me." Her mind raced. Who was he? Why help her? But the storm allowed no time for doubt. The cold was relentless, and every second outside risked her life. With a shiver that ran deeper than the wind, she accepted his hand, letting him guide her through the blizzard. Each step was a struggle. Memories of her journey flooded back: the cattle she'd lost, the family who had vanished, the endless stretch of snow that had felt like eternity. Silas's name she only learned later spoke little, but his presence steadied her, a counterpoint to her fear. They reached a small outcropping of rocks, partially shielding them from the wind. He quickly built a small fire, its flickering glow a fragile barrier against the storm. Clara huddled close, the warmth seeping into her frozen limbs. Yet relief was tinged with unease. She was alive, yes, but dependent on a stranger. And in the Old West, dependence was often more dangerous than the cold. Clara pressed herself closer to the fire, letting its fragile warmth seep into her bones. Her fingers, once stiff and unresponsive, slowly began to regain feeling. Yet the reprieve was fleeting. The wind shrieked outside, a reminder that the storm was far from over. She glanced at Silas, noting the calm determination in his movements as he stoked the flames. Every motion was deliberate, almost ritualistic, as if he had survived countless winters and knew precisely how to navigate them. "You're lucky," he said quietly, not looking at her. "Most don't make it this far." Clara swallowed hard, the words biting deeper than the cold ever could. Luck had little to do with it. She knew the truth. She had been lost, drifting closer to death with every step. And now, here she was, relying on a man she barely knew. Trust was a fragile thing, and the storm outside only sharpened its danger. "I don't even know your name," she admitted, voice trembling. "Silas," he replied simply, offering no more than that. Silas's eyes flicked toward the darkness beyond the firelight. "We need to move before night falls completely. The temperature drops fast, and the snow will bury the trail." Her heart sank. She wanted to stay, to let the warmth linger just a little longer. But she knew he was right. Survival demanded action, and hesitation could cost her everything. She nodded, letting him guide her to her feet once more. Each step was a battle. Her muscles screamed, and her lungs burned with effort. Yet Silas was unwavering, his pace measured, giving her just enough support without making her feel helpless. The journey resumed, the storm unforgiving. Trees and rocks became blurred shapes, every shadow a potential threat. Clara's mind raced, recalling tales of travelers lost to the wilderness, of wolves and frostbite, of the merciless cruelty of winter. She wanted to ask him why he helped her, but the words caught in her throat. There was a quiet authority in him, a strength she didn't fully understand, and questioning it felt both reckless and necessary. Hours passed, though time seemed meaningless in the endless white. Finally, a faint outline appeared through the storm, a small cabin, smoke curling from its chimney like a promise of life. Relief surged through her, but it was accompanied by a knot of tension. The Old West had taught her that salvation often came at a price, and the stranger who had saved her might demand more than she was ready to give. As they reached the cabin, Silas paused, glancing at her with an intensity that made her stomach tighten. "Inside," he said simply. "You'll be safe for now." But Clara knew, as the door creaked open and warmth spilled into the storm, that safety was temporary. Out there, beyond the walls of the cabin, the cold and the choices she would soon have to make were still waiting. The cabin was small, its wooden walls creaking under the weight of snow. Inside, the fire crackled, casting flickering shadows across the room. Clara sank onto a rough-hewn chair, exhaustion pressing down like a heavy weight. She could feel her body relaxing for the first time in days, yet her mind remained alert, scanning every corner for signs of danger. Silas moved silently, inspecting the perimeter from the small window. His movements were careful, almost instinctual. Clara watched him, curiosity mixing with unease. "You've been out here a long time," she said cautiously. He didn't turn immediately. "Long enough," he replied, voice low. "Enough to know that the cold will kill you faster than hunger." Clara shivered at the thought. She'd survived by sheer will, but now she realized how fragile that will had become. "Why help me?" she asked finally, the question spilling out before she could stop it. Silas glanced at her, eyes narrowing briefly. "I've seen what happens when people are left to freeze. Some I couldn't save. I couldn't let it happen again." The words struck her, carrying both comfort and the weight of unspoken tragedy. He didn't elaborate, and she didn't press further, sensing that his past was a landscape as harsh as the snow outside. Suddenly, a sharp howl echoed through the wind outside. Clara froze. Wolves. She had heard stories of packs descending on travelers, their hunger as merciless as the winter itself. Silas stiffened, moving to the door, listening intently. "We need to secure the perimeter," he muttered, then stepped into the storm again, leaving Clara trembling in the firelight. Minutes stretched like hours. When he returned, his coat dusted with snow, she could see the tension etched into his features. "They're close," he said grimly. "And there's something else. Tracks leading this way. Humans." Fear tightened around Clara's chest. Humans in the Old West were often worse than any predator, greedy, desperate, and cruel. She realized that safety was only temporary. Even here, they were vulnerable. The snow outside intensified, drumming against the roof like the heartbeat of a distant, angry giant. Clara glanced at Silas, realizing that she would need to trust him completely if she hoped to survive. But trust was dangerous, and dependency could be fatal. A knock at the door shattered the silence. Clara's heart stopped. She exchanged a glance with Silas, steady, calm, but with an edge of alertness that set her nerves on fire. The knock came again, louder this time, echoing through the small cabin. Clara's stomach knotted. Outside, the storm raged, snow piling high against the walls. Whoever or whatever was out there had chosen the wrong place to test. Silas moved to the door, hand hovering near the hilt of his revolver. "Stay back," he warned, voice calm but firm. Clara obeyed, retreating toward the far corner of the cabin, her eyes wide with fear and anticipation. The door creaked open under his hand, revealing two figures silhouetted against the white storm. Bandits, by the looks of them ragged, desperate, and armed with crude knives. One of them spat onto the snow. "Warm fire in a cold world," the taller one sneered. "Looks like we found ourselves a prize." Silas didn't flinch. He stepped forward, blocking the doorway, his presence commanding. "Leave now," he said evenly. "You don't want this fight." The bandits laughed, the sound harsh against the howling wind. "We want more than just a fight. That girl, she's worth something. And you're in our way." Clara's heart raced. The cold outside seemed almost merciful compared to the heat of fear rising in the cabin. She looked at Silas, realizing that their survival rested entirely on him. But this was different from the snowstorm. Human cunning and malice were unpredictable, and one wrong move could cost her life. The taller bandit lunged forward, knife raised. Silas reacted instantly, drawing his revolver with smooth precision, a shot ringing out that cracked through the storm like lightning. The knife clattered to the floor, the man stumbling back. The second bandit made a desperate grab for Clara, but Silas was already in motion, moving faster than she thought possible. He grabbed her arm, pulling her behind him as he fired a second shot, forcing the men to retreat into the storm. Their laughter faded into the wind, leaving only the roar of the blizzard. Clara sank to the floor, trembling, her body shaking with adrenaline and relief. Silas knelt beside her, voice gentle but firm. "You're safe for now, but the storm isn't over, and neither are they." Her gaze met his, a mixture of gratitude and fear. I don't know if I can do this, she admitted, voice barely above a whisper. You can, he said quietly, gripping her shoulder. You've made it this far. The cold, the wolves, the desperate, they're all tests, and you're still standing. Outside, the snow continued to fall, unrelenting and merciless. Inside, Clara realized that survival wasn't just about warmth or fire, it was about courage, trust, and the hard choice to rely on someone else. And with Silas beside her, she had a chance. But the night was long, the storm unforgiving, and tomorrow would demand even more than they could imagine. The cabin groaned under the weight of snow. Each gust rattled the walls, each howl of wind a reminder of the wilderness outside. Clara pressed herself closer to the fire, trying to draw strength from its flickering light. Silas moved around the room with quiet efficiency, checking the perimeter, listening to every creak and groan. The storm's getting worse, he muttered. We can't stay here forever. Clara shivered, not just from cold but from the knowledge of what he meant. The bandits would come back, drawn by desperation or greed, and the blizzard would make escape a near impossibility. Her heart pounded. Survival depended on choice, on courage she wasn't sure she had. Silas looked at her, eyes sharp. You have to trust me. It's the only way. She nodded, swallowing her fear. The fire warmed her body, but it could not thaw the tension coiled in her chest. Together, they stepped outside, into the storm, the cold cutting through their layers like knives. Visibility was near zero. Every step was a gamble. Every shadow could conceal danger. Hours passed. The blizzard seemed endless, a white wall that swallowed sound and shape alike. Then a faint noise, shouting, muffled by the wind. The bandits had returned, braving the storm to track them down. Clara's stomach twisted. Fear threatened to paralyze her, but Silas grabbed her hand, steadying her. You're not alone, he said, voice firm. We face this together. The figures emerged from the swirling snow, knives glinting, desperation in their eyes. Silas fired a warning shot, the sound cutting sharply through the storm. The bandits faltered, but one lunged toward Clara, reckless and dangerous. Silas moved first, intercepting him, while Clara realized she had a choice, to hide or to act. Fear surged but courage followed. She grabbed a heavy branch from the snow and swung with all her strength, knocking the attacker off balance. He stumbled into the snow, dazed, giving Silas the opening he needed to disarm the others. The blizzard continued to rage, but the immediate danger passed. Clara's heart raced, adrenaline and relief mingling. She realized she had faced her fear, not alone, but in partnership with someone she had learned to trust. Yet, as they huddled together, snow clinging to their coats, Clara knew the night was far from over. The storm, the wilderness, and human cruelty were still threats, but now, she understood that survival wasn't only about endurance, it was about action, choices, and trust. The wind howled like a living thing, battering the cabin walls and cutting through every layer of clothing. Clara shivered violently, but this time fear was tempered with resolve. She had survived the storm, the wolves, and the bandits, but the harshest test was not the cold or human cruelty. It was the weight of choice itself. Silas moved beside her, scanning the horizon through the swirling white. We can't stay, he said, voice steady. The snowdrifts will bury the cabin by morning. We need to move, or we'll be trapped completely. Clara nodded, gripping his arm. Every step forward would demand courage, each movement a fight against exhaustion and doubt. Yet something inside her had shifted. Fear still existed, but it was now coupled with the determination to survive, and more than that, to live. They ventured into the storm once more, each step a battle against the merciless wind. Shapes moved in the distance, trees, rocks, and shadows that played tricks on the eyes. Then, faint but unmistakable, the sounds of pursuit, the bandits, refusing to abandon their chase. Silas slowed, pressing a finger to his lips. He guided her to a narrow ravine hidden by the drifts, a natural shelter. Here, he whispered, we can wait them out. Clara crouched beside him, shivering, yet she no longer felt entirely helpless. She helped to pile snow into a small barrier, following his instructions, feeling the power of choice in action. Survival was no longer passive, it was deliberate. The bandits arrived, shouting into the wind, fury and frustration mixing with the storm. They couldn't see the pair hidden by the snow, and their frustration grew. One kicked at the drifts, cursing, before retreating into the blizzard with his partner. The storm swallowed them, leaving silence in its wake. Clara exhaled, feeling the tension drain from her body. She looked at Silas, seeing not just the stranger who had saved her life, but a man who had taught her to face the impossible and emerge stronger. I thought I'd never make it, she said softly. You did, he replied, eyes meeting hers, and you chose to keep moving. That's what matters. The snow continued to fall, relentless but no longer terrifying. Together, they walked toward the faint promise of dawn. The horizon tinged with pale gold, Clara knew that the journey ahead would be long, the dangers many, and the lessons harsh, but she also understood that she had been given a chance to survive, to trust, and to change her own fate. As the first rays of sunlight broke through the storm, Clara felt the warmth seep into her bones. The blizzard was behind them, but the experience would forever shape who she was. She glanced at Silas, and for the first time in days, she smiled not just at safety, but at possibility. The snow had tried to claim her, the world had tested her, and yet, she had chosen to live and in doing so, rewritten her fate.